Michael J.
Patrick, are like all the decks in Modern just super weird or like disrespectful, let's say, of what has come before? I think maybe that's a better word than weird.
That's a kind of a loaded question. I don't know about, like, help me understand exactly which aspect of what is the most disrespectful thing you've seen this week?
All right, here's a super disrespectful. I mean, I'm gonna set the stage for you, and you're gonna be like, these youngsters, they got no respect. Back in our day, uphill in the snow, both directions.
Are you sure you're not confusing me with you?
Look, man.
But all right, let's see it.
I'm gonna go back in time to when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, a veritable child of maybe 28 years. Okay, so this is a long time ago in Magic the Gathering Pro Tour history. Your good friend, your very good friend, co-top 8 competitor at one point, Gabriel Nassif, made one of his innumerable top 8s with a combo deck, go figure, and he had to use an entire turn back in the day to cast Mana Severance to take the lands out of his deck before he proceeded to kill you with a Goblin Charbelcher. No respect, these modern guys.
Yeah, I mean, times are a little different now. You don't really need to play with land with the double-face cards. As we've been talking about, Charbelcher's been a pretty popular sideboard option for these no spells decks. But Zix Jerry's 5-0 list of just straight up actual Goblin Charbelcher, like do it on purpose. This is kind of an evolution, right?
This is exactly the deck that I wanted to start on. It's just like, I don't know, man. This is like the Oops No Lands deck, but it just doesn't lose to graveyard hate, right? Like it's...
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big advantage, right? Like, people are dedicating so many slots to trying to fight graveyard cards. So to have, such a powerful kill... Now, obviously, sometimes you don't draw the Goblin Charbelcher. But
yes.
What's interesting is that with the advent of double-face cards giving you access to a much higher land count than we normally ever see out of a Charbelcher deck, you can actually cast some spells.
The weird thing is that it's still 0, but it's also Valakut Awakening, Spikefield Hazard, Bala Get
Turntimber
Recovery,
Symbiosis, Shatterskull Smashing, Seagate Restoration, and that's all that Balajed Recovery. Like, you got as much land as anybody, right?
The thing that's
go ahead, yeah.
absolutely horrible about this deck is this deck, from its broadest way of approaching, has only non-basic lands, right? Like, if you're like, all right, we're going to say this deck has lands, they're only non-basic lands. The deck plays 4 Blood Moon main deck. It is just the height of disrespect.
No. It goes better. Blood Moon fixes your mana. Like, you've got cards like Ironcrag Feet that take triple red. You're talking about a deck that has Balajed Recovery, Turntimber Symbiosis, Seagate Restoration. That's 12 sources that don't make red. If you drop a Blood Moon, you actually get to fix your mana, because every card in your deck is castable with Blood Moon, aside from the double-face cards, being in their alt mode.
Well, it's not like you would ever get much value out of a Turntimber Symbiosis, although I guess flipping up a gigantic Simian Spirit Guide is within the potential range. Although you can't be happy with that.
No, you're definitely trying to just actually play them out as land in general, Now, there are going to be, in theory, you could end up in a spot of being like, I guess I actually can Seagate Restoration. I don't have anything else going on, play a couple rituals. But you're not happy about that. That's mainly, weirdly, a thing for when you do have Blood Moon. Because the primary way you have to actually cast Seagate Restoration is Manamorphose anyway. So you do have to try to come up with the triple blue, so it's not like it's always going to happen, but normally you're not going to be on that kind of time anyway, but sometimes the game can stall out from Blood Moon.
I think, just not for nothing, it seems to me one of the most popular decks in Modern right now is some version of Tron, so just Blood Moon is regular text in a key matchup anyway. So this deck, you can win on turn 1, right? You're like an untapped fake land in a Simian Spirit Guide, Desperate Ritual, Paretic Ritual, Ironcrag Feat. I can only cast one more spell this turn. But I have 7 red floating from Ironcrag Feat. 4 of it go into Goblin Charbelcher. 3 go to tap the Goblin Charbelcher, right? Like, that's...
Right. Or if you're on the draw, you could just have 7 of the various mana ritual type cards, as long as... And 1 land and 6 rituals, which is obviously quite the parlay. But, like Simian Spirit Guide, a land, and then just Desperate Rituals for days.
Yeah.
But it's pretty... It's not just about the Charbelcher, though. It's important to note that Modern gives us access to a second auto-win combo if you have no land in your deck. Recross the Paths is the big evolution here. Recross the Paths is 2 and a green sorcery. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. Bet that's never going to happen. Keep going. Put that card into play and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Clash with an opponent. If you win, return Recross the Paths to its owner's hand.
So do you
stack your deck.
But you clash after you stack your deck? Is that how it works?
Correct. You stack your entire deck, and then you clash. Now, that you clash isn't that important. You're going to frequently win the clash because you're going to have the top card of your deck is going to be Goblin Charbelcher. But really what it's about is that for 3 mana, you could just play Recross the Paths and set up your whole deck, including you could actually set it up so that instead of just playing the Charbelcher next, you play Blood Moon next. Or any number of Blood Moons, right? Depending on the matchup. You could also play Goblin Charbelcher. You could go get a bunch of Pact of Negations and Goblin Charbelcher. Also, and here's a really important one, you have the Miser's Copy. It's not really a Miser's Copy because it's a tutor target, but the most common thing, in a lot of spots, you're going to want to go put Reforge the Soul on top of your deck. Reforge the Soul is the Wheel of Fortune Miracle. It's 3 red sorcery. Each player discards his or her hand, then draws 7 cards. And it has Miracle 1 and a red. So after you stack your whole deck, you got 3 mana. Let's say you just go turn 2, Pyretic Ritual, Recross, or Pyretic Ritual and Metamorphose, or you just have Simian Spirit Guide. But on turn 2 you recross the path, set up your whole deck. Next turn you draw Reforge the Soul, and you're actually on some Wheel of Fortune time. You have the perfect. You get to set your deck up so that it's a land. It could just be 2 Simian Spirit Guides, 2 rituals, and Ironcrag Feat, a Goblin Charbelcher, and a Pact of Negation.
That's pretty spicy.
And if you don't want to give your opponent, recross. Or sorry, let me rephrase. You also have Valakut Awakening. If you actually have discretionary mana, you're going to more often want Reforge the Soul. But if you have discretionary mana, Valakut Awakening can sometimes be a value for not giving your opponent new cards, in certain matchups. But much more often, you're going to want Reforge the Soul anyway, just because not only is it cheaper, but you're getting 7 cards for sure.
Well, Reforge the Soul is actually subtly a powerful card advantage engine, because if you spend your cards for sake of argument, right, you're casting rituals and your big spell gets countered, whatever, you have few cards in hand, your opponent could have been drawing extra cards, right? So they've got 7 and you've got 0. You Miracle, Reforge the Soul, all of a sudden you both have 7. It's not just you drew 7, right? You make it so that they're not getting you're not kind of blunting how good their hand was from all their drawing.
Totally. In a certain spot, if you set up your whole deck, you could in theory Valakut Awakening into Reforge the Soul, but I don't know, man. I think that this is kind of this is a whole new thing, right? And you're getting a lot of mileage out of your sideboard too, right? One Empty the Warrens, 1 Nature's Claim, 1 Sweltering Sun, 1 Boil, 1 Grafdigger's Cage, 1 Lightning Bolt.
Well, the Recross the Paths is basically just it's I'm not even sure how to describe it. It's like a Vampiric Tutor that doesn't cost any life, but that also you get it back, right? So it's kind of a demonic tutor.
Well, you don't need to get it back because you already stacked your whole deck. And you're going to, but I mean, yeah, you get it back sometimes, but it's definitely the Goblin Recruiter experience where you just get to stack your entire deck. And if you can't win the game after stacking your deck, and remember, Goblin Recruiter is banned in everything except Vintage, you know?
So here's the thing. You're talking about like the one Empty the Warrens in the sideboard. Like it is not difficult. I think if you resolve the Recross the Paths to just put like all your Manamorphose on top of your library, right? You're like, okay, Manamorphose, Empty the Warrens, right? Like, whatever other ritual action you have going on, it's just free.
So, Goblin, like, having that many goblins is also just a powerful way to overcome a bunch of the most natural hate in the format for Charbelcher. You know, like, if your opponent has a Leyline of Sanctity, well, that could stop Goblin Charbelcher, but it doesn't stop the Empty the Warrens tokens. Or if your opponent has a Pithing Needle, like some people are going to just drop a Pithing Needle on turn 1, and you're not going to be able to activate Goblin Charbelcher. Or a Stony Silence or something, right?
That's pretty good.
An Empty the Warrens is such a powerful alternative angle. And of course, you also have access to one Nature's Claim that you can go get to try to solve those problems as well. Or Lightning Bolt. Obviously, some of the various hate cards are in creature form these days. But having that extra angle of attack, it's just so good. Particularly, I mean, also people play Surgical to try to fight the graveyard decks anyway. You want to be careful you don't get yourself stuck in a situation where them taking your Charbelcher means you got to try to win with Spirit Guides.
Well, you've got the extra big Spirit Guides if you want them in this deck. Thing I'd say here, two things that are interesting to me. One of them is, I think this would be so fun to play slow, right? So this deck seems like, obviously, you can win on turn 1 or turn 2, just like jamming your combo down. But doesn't this seem like a deck where you're just like, test spell, chip shot, and then like when they don't die, you're like, all right, Balagid Recovery, let's try it again.
Actually, that's a great way to put it, because unlike almost every Charbelcher deck we've ever seen, this deck is going to have a very consistent mana draw instead of just all or nothing.
Yes. If you want the land, you got it.
And the not only does it have just a ton more reliable of mana than previous Charbelcher decks, the number of cards that actually do something is so high in this deck compared to Charbelcher decks. You know, there's been decks in the past, these decks that are just full of rituals, where there's only like 8 cards, sometimes 9 or 12 even. But this deck has a lot of cards that as long as you have one of them in your opener, you're actually doing something. Right? Obviously, Goblin Charbelcher and Recross the Paths we've already talked about. But if you have Blood Moon, that's already a thing. This is a really good turn 2 Blood Moon deck, sometimes turn 1, but this is a really good turn 2 Blood Moon deck, giving your opponent a chance to show you what they're playing, show you a land. There's also Balagid Recovery, which if you end up, if you're playing at something a little slower, Balagid, if you're going to be in the spot of test spell, Balagid Recovery, that's just another way to win the game. Like if they counter your Recross the Paths, then you can recover it. And it's not like Reforge the Soul is the worst spell in this deck either to just do slow. And then importantly, Valakut Awakening. Valakut Awakening being card neutral is just such a big deal, because if you don't have any other business in your hand, if you Valakut Awakening, you're going to get a fresh new hand as if you took a mulligan, except you'll have gotten a chance to develop your mana base already, and your new hand will be disproportionately business, because you'll have just put on the bottom of your deck a whole bunch of cards that weren't the business you wanted.
The cool thing about Valakut Awakening is it's just like, also, it's just kind of favorable to you. Like, a lot of the times in the past, cards like this have made you do like a little more than you might have wanted, but maybe there's a card you like, right? You don't have to put that card away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the fact that Valakut Awakening can go all the way but it can also let you be selective. Like, let's say you're like, well, my hand doesn't do anything, but it does have 2 Pact of Negations. In theory, like in the right matchup, you might want to just keep the 2 packs, look at 5, and be like very ready to force through some action.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like this might even be a kind of deck where you're just like, all right, we're going to play it slow, and I'm just going to cast Charbelcher 4 times in a row, right? Because like I literally have 7 land in play. You know, I think that's so plausible. This deck seems like I don't know how the card Irencrag Feet is okay. Because it's like, it makes...
You think Irencrag Feet is the problem here?
It makes literal 7, and it has this, like, clever clause that you can only play 1 spell after you cast it. But 7 is just the perfect amount.
If it wasn't for this, it'd be for something else. If you recross the paths... Even if, like, let's say that Irencrag Feet and Charbelcher... First of all, let's just say Irencrag Feet wasn't around. Stack your deck and win a different way. Right?
Yeah, no part of this deck is okay.
Well, I don't know, man. I actually... Don't get me wrong. Manamorphose... Like, definitely Manamorphose is high on the list of cards that might be banned at some point. And it's not like Blood Moon is ever actually okay. But... it's definitely Recross the Paths that's completely broken. If this deck ends up being too much, it's Recross the Paths that's the broken card here, man. This is insane. Okay. I don't think this is the only Recross the Paths deck we're going to see.
Okay, first of all, Recross the Paths in this deck seems fantastic. And I would state, if there was never a card printed called Recross the Paths, there would be 5-0 decks that just played the other 56 cards and then like 4 Cantripy things or something.
Maybe.
Recross the Paths just is another route to get you to your broken draw. You can natural the broken draw elsewise, right? This is just kind of like a redundant copy of, you know, whatever part of the combo you needed.
I don't know, man. I think you're still thinking of Recross the Paths as a Vampiric Tutor. This isn't a Vampiric Tutor. This is stack your whole deck. This is 14 Vampiric Tutors.
This is like Limdol's Vault, not.
It's much... No, it's still... See, Limdol's Vault, you can never even come close to stacking your deck. Not compared to the way that Recross the Paths emulates Goblin Recruiters. Like, when you would Goblin Recruiter back in the day with Food Chain, you know the top 40 cards of your deck or whatever, or top 30 cards of your deck are all Goblins, and you're going to just win immediately. This deck is the same way. You're going to stack your whole deck. You got everything. You just got to make sure you do it fast enough that you're not delaying the game.
Yeah, but the thing that's gross about this deck is it's also potentially a turn 1 kill deck.
Yeah, I think
all these other features.
More of a turn 2, a lot more. It's not going to turn 1 very often, but it'll come up sometimes.
Oh, forget about whether it's more often a turn 2 kill deck. Sure. I think the fact that this is a reliable turn 7 kill deck is problematic, right? Like, because if it's trying to kill on turn 7, usually that's just because it horribly exhausted the opponent's resources, and them just stopping you from winning on before turn 4.
Yeah, or you're just hanging out with Blood Moon, and you're like, why bother going for it?
Oh yeah, that's true. It's not like a Wormcoil Engine scares you with this deck.
No.
A fair Wormcoil Engine, huh? That's gonna win around turn 10? Yeah, not worried.
So I don't know if this constitutes disrespectful, but there's another, another unfair deck that has some fair tendencies. Did you see that Winota Joiner of Forces deck?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you'd like this one. Talk to me about a weird 603 Labs 5-0 list.
So the funny thing about this list is the first card you see is Angrath's Marauders, right? And I'm like, a 7 casting cost 4/4. This thing better do something. And I'm reading it, I'm like, this is not interesting enough to play. And I'm going through all of these cards, and it's only from cards 31 through 35 when I'm like, oh, Winota Joiner of Forces, eh?
Generally, Angrath's Marauders' only true calling in life has been, it's like is Pepsi okay type of thing. in any format where Winota is legal and Agent of Treachery is banned, yeah, I guess Ingress Marauders is okay.
That is such a perfect crystallization of Ingress Marauders.
Yeah, I mean it's a high impact card. But it's all about being a human.
It's the
because for 0 mana and already attacking,
yeah,
the price is right. More structurally important to this deck. I mean, obviously the Stoneforge Mystic package is a lot more varied than we normally see. Batterskull, Embercleave, Maul of the Sky Claves, Smuggler's Copter, and Sword of Fire and Ice. But that's all really cool. And obviously, Aether Vial is always like a big game. But it's kind of interesting that because you're trying to get a mix of humans and non-humans, you have this incentive to play the humans that make some non-human tokens, like Seasoned Pyromancer, Pia, and Kieran Noir, and then you're actually playing a little bit of a hate bear game, Leonin Arbiter and Thalia. You got some humans, some not. Stoneforge is obviously not, but you can go the other way with I guess just more of the token makers, but Seasoned Pyromancer, that's like such a sweet get also. It's not going to burst people down as much, but it's a lot of material if you ever get a single hit, activation of Winota in. And if you have that many tokens, this is definitely a deck that might, Winota a couple times.
All right, so you asked about the respect level of this deck. Right, so this is a classic deck of some cards that are extremely high leverage, some cards that you definitely want to see in your opening hand with a high level of regularity. I'm talking about Aether Vial. I'm talking about Stoneforge Mystic. In some matchups, I'm talking about Thalia. This deck is just showing off at 80 cards. Please disagree with this statement. I'll play 80 cards. I mean, I've got an Aether Vial and a Stoneforge Mystic deck, but why not decrease my likelihood of having either of those in my opening hand by, I don't know, a good third?
Well, you're already going to be on the backup plan so much. Blinking Pia and Kieran Noir, blinking Seasoned Pyromancer, blinking Stoneforge Mystic, and obviously this is Charming Prince too, but importantly also in this format, blinking Skyclave Apparition. Like, that's a lot of targets. And it's not like having the Yorion backup plan is like...
Oh, no.
Why is that bad?
I am not disagreeing with you.
Very robust.
I am not saying that it's bad. I am not saying it's...
There are no bad cards in this
It's not robust. In fact, I don't want to play against this deck. I'm just saying they're showing off.
It even has a really good mana base.
Yeah, it's gross. Like, this deck is not as gross as the Ironcrag Feet Goblin Charbelcher deck, but I gotta say...
This deck is beautiful, in my opinion.
Any deck that is good, that has Winota Joiner of Forces, is automatically the bad people, in my opinion.
Dude, can you just imagine you Winota and go find your Magus of the Moon? Or Auriok Champion against somebody like you?
Dude, I can't beat... Are you kidding? How do you beat this deck? It has 4/4.
So that's a pretty sweet deck, right?
Burnt and Forge Tender, I'm way more scared of than Auriok Champion. Auriok Champion, sometimes you can overwhelm him. You can't get the last hit in on a Burnt and Forge Tender. It has literal training wheels on it. Just in case there's this other line on this card. I mean, this deck is sweet. I mean, the fact that they're just like, oh, I'm going to sideboard some lightning bolts because sometimes I want to shoot at that fill in the blank. Oh, can you imagine at 4 mana you boil them? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Boil.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Part of what I love so much about the boil in this deck, I mean, boiling on your opponent's end step and then untap and dropping Winota. That's the sequence, man.
That is
Boil
the
is an
sequence.
excellent test spell.
Yeah, I to answer your original question, I definitely saw this deck, and I was definitely offended by all aspects of it.
So here's an interesting deck that is probably not offensive, but you might give him a tip of the hat. Duke Vitro's 5-0 list. On the surface, it's kind of just a Sultai Death Shadow deck. Something that's a little interesting, there's no Scourge of Skyclave. If there's no Scourge already, you're kind of like, oh, okay, we're doing things a little differently. And then this deck has Tarmogoyf and Snapcaster Mage, and you're like, I guess that's fine, sure. Tarmogoyf's pretty frequent, and Snapcaster Mage, I could believe it.
Those guys are both on the short list of best 2-drop of all time.
Where it gets spicy is the pair of Windcaller Avens.
Ooh, like Mini Wonder over here?
Dude, for 1 mana, you can, make your Death Shadow or your Tarmogoyf fly over, but importantly, you actually grow your Tarmogoyf. It's not like this gets creatures in the graveyard that easily.
I think this card is sweet.
This is a lot cooler of a way to get an extra type in your graveyard than playing, Tarfire or something, right?
When you say it like that, it sounds like the people who play Tarfire are, of low morality or something. Yeah, this is really sweet. I love the fact that you can... I guess you can defensive combo people, right? Like, they come in with their Baneslayer Angel or, whatever they've got, and you're like, Windcaller Raven, 5/6 block. Like, that's got to be pretty awesome, right?
Yeah, and it's even uncounterable, which is, if you ever face one of these spirit decks and, you might be concerned about Spell Queller, no, you don't have to worry about it. Like, they can't get you with they can't get you with something like, for instance, Rattle Chains. Giving their own guy Hexproof doesn't do anything, right? And the Wanderer can't counter your spell. The Spell Queller can't counter your spell. You literally just have this uncounterable way to jump up and just gobble somebody's
whoever,
whatever. It could be their random, the random rattle chains or the Skyclave Apparition, get your card back, or even a Supreme Phantom, whatever. They weren't expecting you to have any flyers.
I mean, clearly the real intent of this is you want to send your 13/13 over unblocked, but it's highly disrespectful, regardless. Yes.
And there is one Scourge of the Skyclaves, I guess, but it's in the sideboard to bring in as a potential traverse target in games that might stall a little bit.
Do you think that people are often, maybe not people, but Duke Vitro at least, are often traversing for the Windcaller Raven?
I would love to think so. I don't know how much it comes up, but one of the things that makes me think you might really have that as a regular part of the menu, the fact that there's 2. Because then you can burn one just to cycle.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to just cycle it than the old cantrip levitate type, like the old cantrip versions where you're just, like leap or whatever, where you need to have a target.
Yeah.
So the fact that there's 2, you can actually cycle one and still have it on the menu. I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I often imagine myself playing some of these decks, and I was like, oh, okay, this Charbelcher deck, I imagine winning really quick. And then I also imagine grinding them out for the 7-turn kill, which I like. I like the imaginary feeling of both of those. Then I imagine myself playing the Winota deck, and I'm like, oh, I'm a show-off. I've got 80 cards and a terrible person. This is a weird Venn diagram overlap. But then I imagine myself as Duke Vitro, and I am definitely imagining myself using Traverse the Umenwald to get Windcaller Raven. That's the whole thing for me. I've only got 3 Traverse the Umenwald. Because why? I'm replacing one of those 1 casting cost library manipulation cards with Windcaller Raven. I
was going to go get it anyway.
Yeah.
Might as well cut out the middleman.
There you go. I just saved a G.
Any of the other ones that really jump out at you? Because we're still seeing a lot of Omnath good stuff, right? Like doing very, very well. They have just such high card quality. Does does the recent kind of twist on the Steel Shaper's Gift Colossus Hammer deck do anything for you? It's got a few more creatures than we normally see in these kinds of decks. You still have and keep in mind, obviously, just as a refresher, the whole combo here that you're trying to set up is Colossus Hammer, which is the 1-cost equipment. The equipped creature gets +10/+10 and loses flying and has a quick cost 8. You're trying to set it up so that you can use a card like Sigarda's Aid or Pure Steel Paladin in order to try to let you equip it without actually paying for it.
Yeah, just combo them.
Right. And this deck, obviously Pure Steel Paladin and Stoneforge Mystic we would expect. Giver of Runes is nothing crazy. Not everybody does it, but it easily understand why you might want that in a deck like this. Burrington Forge Tender, it's like, I guess. I mean, it's on theme if you really think the metagame is a specific way and you just want to protect your combo and you want to have a situation in which you can actually equip something reliably. Like you can have Sigarda's Aid and have something that people aren't just going to bolt in response. But talk to me about Ginger Brute, man.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Ginger Brute when I say it's on theme, it's on kind of multiple themes, right? One of them is this deck has a minor artifact sort of line. It's got cranial plating, right, as well. So
that's true.
It's just an artifact for cranial plating.
And you want to get Metalcraft. Well, no, you want Metalcraft for Pure Steel Paladin anyway.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it. The other thing is that Ginger Brute naturally has evasion, right? So, if you're going to have an equipped creature, right? Like sometimes you have an equipped creature and they have +10/+10. Sometimes you have an equipped creature and they're wearing a cranial plating, and either of them could be near lethal. The fact that they can be blocked is a thing that might just buy a turn for your opponent to kill you. Like, this deck is reasonably fast, but it's not the fastest.
You're not trying to set up some kind of Lurrus of the Dream Den, Ginger Brute, gain 3 life a turn combo, are you?
I mean, I hope not, right? Like, that seems like it's ambitious to believe that you could set this up. And at the same time, it is woefully a not ambitious thing to want to do in a format that has some of the other decks that we were talking about. Be like, oh man, I'm going to get him. I'm going to loop this Ginger Brute. He's got haste. That's going to allow him to do his ability. All I need is like a lot of mana and a completely unmolested plan, right? Maybe the Burrington Forge Tender can help you out there. Actually, Lurrus Burrington Forge Tender does not seem like a friendly way to play Magic to me. That's a noticeably unfriendly way to play Magic.
So, do you like the mono white version better, or some people play Boros like Reynad's 5-0 list, where you still have the whole Stoneforge Mystic type of deal, but instead of the Pure Steel Paladin angle, there's this magnetic theft action for single red, attach target equipment to target creature. So you get to just have a lot faster, burstier draws in certain spots. And to help support this, there's a lot less that you don't have the whole Stoneforge Mystic diverse package because you're just really intensely all in on the combo. Shadow Spear being the only spice given its utility. But the Open the Armory giving you even more looks. Like, this deck is truly all in. And obviously both decks have Inkmoth Nexus, which if you can do your combo on the Nexus, you can kill in one shot. But this deck actually also has Core Duelist and Core Outfitter. And Core Outfitter giving you another way to just equip, and Core Duelist giving you another way to leverage an equip into a one-shot kill. This is a deck that can go turn 1 Core Duelist, turn 2 Colossus Hammer,
magnetic theft.
Or you can go Sigarda's Aid, Colossus Hammer. Right? Like, this deck has a lot of looks to a turn 2 kill.
So, if I had to pick one of the two decks, I would definitely pick Reynad's deck. I mean, not because it's Boros, right? I actually just think that all the stuff that you described are mostly white cards, and I just like those better. I think that if you're playing against a red deck, the Ginger Brute looping Burnt and Forge Tender deck is obviously harder to beat for a red deck, but I like the brutality of Reynad's build. But more than that, I actually think that there is a little utility you're getting out of red other than the magnetic theft. For example, you do have like the option of like looping a Seal of Fire, which doesn't seem that exciting, but it's actually, there's some matchups where just having the ability to play that Seal of Fire with Lurrus of the Dream Den every turn is going to suppress the opponent's entire strategy. And I think like small angle maybe, but it's something that you get out of having a second color, and I like the main plan on the white cards better anyway in this version.
It does actually open up an interesting topic, though, which is that this is a really cool, true double, it's a Lurrus of the Dream Den deck that starts off with Lurrus of the Dream Den as its companion, but it has 4 Lurruses in the sideboard. You see, you've got Lurrus as a companion, but if you in the matchups where you sideboard in Leyline of Sanctity, you also just sideboard in all 4 Lurruses, and now you're just a deck that plays Lurrus. That's like a really, like, most decks are not actually all like for real play it, but like you don't see 4 copies of a companion in the sideboard that often if the companion is legal as a companion in game 1.
Yeah, I like that, just kind of stretching the deck building a little bit there. Just kind of really interesting the kind of the metagame design choices here. So I like this deck from some dimensions just because it maybe not reliable is the wrong word, but it's a viable turn 2 kill deck, right? So I like that. But at the same time, it's like a Leyline of Sanctity deck. So, mulligan the Leyline of Sanctity, whatever. You can stop somebody from beating you with a Goblin Charbelcher or similar combo, with your opening hand. Or at the very least, it will buy you some time for them to set up their deck and have to remove the Leyline of Sanctity first. But the thing that's weird to me is, given the fact that it has these tools, like, wouldn't you imagine that it would have something that, like, could interact with permanents better? Like, I feel like I wouldn't mind having... Well, I wouldn't mind having a Leyline of Sanctity, knowing that my opponent couldn't Charbelcher me, but maybe my opponent will cast their Charbelcher just to get it in play, waiting to get their interaction card. Maybe I'd want to disenchant it or something while it was sitting there. Is that just
dude, you always want to play fair after sideboarding with these decks, man.
I mean, I feel like my main deck plan is so good.
Yeah, keep going. I'm sorry.
I mean, I was saying my main deck plan is so good. I gotta give him a little percentage points.
I don't know about that, but I think it's one of those deals where if you try to beat him at that game, you could win the battle and you're still going to lose the war. So you just shouldn't fight those kind of fights.
I got you.
Like it's like, oh, I disenchanted their thing. So what? Now they're just going to Wheel of Fortune. Right? Like, it's not like you're going to get anywhere that way. So I don't know, man. I do think that Skyclave Apparition is like completely it's all over the place in the format, right? Like, that's certainly proving to be one of the defining cards of the format, right?
Yeah, I mean, sure. It's in a lot of different decks. I mean, actually, in this deck we're talking about right now, not for nothing, Force Spellskite, I feel like that might be a more reliable way to defend your combo than some of the other stuff.
Now, there is another version of this deck that goes the other way with it. Instead of any amount of red and trying to do the turbo thing, it's actually a slight Pedro Gush's 5/0 list is a slightly more pure steel paladin list. It's got Memnite instead of the Ginger Brute for it to be a little bit more turbo, a little faster. It's also got Ornithopter for more zeros, and then it's got Paradise Mantle. It's giving up a lot of its fair plan to just be more of a pure steel paladin deck.
But what are you getting out of this, right? Like, a lot of the time when you pure steel paladin and play all these zeros, you're trying to get somewhere. They're just trying to get to the combo?
Yeah. Yeah, you do kind of want to get to the combo, right? I mean, and it's not like you're not accomplishing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you just have a bunch of zeros in play.
But the thing is that Paradise Mantle on an Ornithopter or a Meta Knight is already like a pretty good interaction to begin with. And look, it's not like you have that many pieces of equipment. Like there's 11, and 4 of them are your combo. And you still have the same 2 cranial platings. The only funky stuff is the one Shadow Spear that everybody plays, but you have the 1 Flare Husk as a potential alternative Stoneforge Mystic when the going gets tough.
Yeah, that's like scraping the bottom of the barrel, man. That's not. I don't want to get the Flare Husk with the Stone.
Besides, dude, don't you want to just draw a card off your hammer? Like, you don't necessarily have the combo yet, but you just want to draw a card. You wanted the hammer anyway, but
maybe
why not draw a card?
Like, I just thinking, like, of all the let's say I like the Colossus Hammer strategy, like, some version of it. I have a hard time believing I would want to play the one that's just like, here's all my zeros. I mean, although I do buy it that, like, your cranial plating will get big. That's cool. You're not giving stuff up other than this is a severe deck building cost. It's the thing, like, you look at that Boros stack, I mean, there's not a bad card in the stack. Or there's, like, weird cards, like Magnetic Theft it's a combo piece, right? Combo pieces are often weird, but it's not bad.
It's 1 mana, get 8, plus 8 mana this turn.
Yeah, I guess it's not bad at all, right? So it's just very specialized. But, like, I don't know. I maybe I should play and try out some of these decks before I judge it, but I don't know. I don't see myself loving this version as much as the Boros version. So
what do you think, man? What's the deck of the week, and why is it the Charbelcher deck?
I mean, it's clearly the Charbelcher deck. Like, there's no reservation in my mind. That deck is brutally fast. It's insulting. The card Ironcrag Feet into Charbelcher is literally insulting to me. And then that doesn't even count the fact that you can stack your own deck. The fact that I'm trying to describe it as a Vampiric Tutor, a card that has defined, I don't know, finish the sentence, except for its 20 Vampiric Tutors. And you get it back.
But it's much more 20 demonic tutors in some ways, because you sure don't have to pay the 2 life 20 times.
Oh, yeah.
But
it replaces itself.
This deck is it's going to be interesting. It's not only a potentially busted deck. I think it's a new engine that we might start seeing show up with other shells.
Oh, absolutely. I think that you really hit the Colossus Hammer on the head, man. Recross the Paths in these zero land, all land decks that's like a new deck building tool that will be used in some other way to, abuse this beautiful game that Richard Garfield,
Dude, this is just the way Garfield intended, man.
It actually is, right? Like,
all right,
he's the man who made Black Lotus and Time Walk.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive. The game